Hi there, I hope you're all doing amazing today. I'm here with another good book. This one is called The Earl Takes All. The author is Lorraine Heath. This book is, when I finished it, I was like, whoa, this is the kind of book that needs to be made into a movie. Honestly, the plot is very engaging, very interesting, and at the very end, it has that twist that just makes you go, oh, whoa, I did not expect that. Honestly, there was this part at the end of the book that made the whole book so much better. Also, this book gave me the vibes of When He Was Wicked by Julia Quinn, kind of like Michael and Francesca vibes, because in this book we also have a character who had been pining over the woman, the only woman he could not have. But in this book, The Earl Takes All, the character is pining over his twin brother's wife. He fell in love with her from the start, and his brother got to her first, and his brother was going to marry her. So our character, his name is Edward, he tries to stay away, except he's really close with his twin brother, so he can't really stay away from the brother's wife, of course. So he wants to ensure that she will never like him. He wants to make sure that the marriage is safe, that he's not causing any problems. So he acts like a not a good person. He does a lot of drinking, a lot of, the rake behavior, lots of women, lots of gambling, again, drinking, as I already said. And his twin brother's wife actually doesn't like him. Now, Edward is the second son. So his brother is the Earl, and Edward is, he doesn't have a title. Now, the book starts with a funeral, and it's Edward's funeral. However, as we find out pretty much right away, the brother who actually died was the Earl, Albert, and Edward is actually taking his place. So he's pretending to be his twin brother. He's pretending to be the husband of the woman he loves. Now, why does he do that? Edward and Albert actually went on a trip to Africa, and Albert was killed by accident. His death is actually described later in the book. And there is that component that Edward blames himself, but he's not guilty at all. The thing is, Albert's wife is pregnant, and she has had miscarriages before, so Albert is very concerned about her miscarrying again if she finds out he died. But as he's dying, and he realizes he's dying, he actually tells Edward, be me, take her to Switzerland. Those are his words. So Edward comes back to England, and he pretends to be Albert. You might be able to tell by my face that I'm already starting to get emotional, because there's a lot of guilt that Edward is feeling, and there's a lot of grief that he's going through because he lost his twin brother. They were exceptionally close. If any of you are twins, you probably know what it's like to have a twin, to be close with them. I can't imagine. I don't have a twin. I do have a brother who I love very much, but if I had a twin, I can't even imagine what it would be like to lose my twin. So Edward is grieving, and he's also pretending to be his brother. Now, his brother's wife doesn't actually realize that that's Edward, not Albert, because her explanation is Edward and Albert have been on that trip for a while, for a few months, I think like 4 months, I believe it's been 4 months, and the wife's explanation is that, we've been apart for so long, we've both changed. I've grown because I was by myself. My husband has changed because he was away from me, and he's also grieving his brother's death. So that's why she thinks her husband seems different, is because of that time that they were apart, and also the grief of his twin brother's death. And that's how Edward is able to get away with pretending to be his twin brother. His best friends, well, their best friends, his and his twin brother's best friends, realized right away that that's not Albert, that's Edward. But they agree to keep the secret until the wife delivers the baby. The wife falls in love with Edward, and she just thinks that I fell in love with my husband again, and this time my love feels different. My love feels almost stronger. It's more passionate, and they do get intimate eventually. Even though Edward is trying to avoid that because he feels guilt because that's his twin brother's wife, and he's pretending to be his twin brother. So whenever the wife tells him "I love you," he internally he's like, "Well, she doesn't love you. She loves your twin brother. She just thinks you're him." So there's so much angst in that book because he loves her so much. And then there is, oh my god, I just remembered the huge part of this story. The thing is, since she's pregnant, if it was Albert who died, well, it was Albert who died, but they're pretending it's Edward who died. Albert is the Earl. If he's dead and his wife is pregnant, if she has a son, the title goes to the son. If she has a daughter, the title goes to Edward. Now, everyone is so convinced that she's having a son that Edward's reasoning is, well, she's gonna give birth to the heir, and then I'm gonna come clean, explain everything, tell her that, hey, I just wanted to make sure you're not worried that your husband died, that you deliver the baby safely, and once you deliver the heir, I'll come clean. So that's Edward's reasoning, and he's actually there to help the wife deliver the baby, and it turns out to be a girl who he loves. He starts to love very much and basically treats her like his daughter. It's a beautiful story in that way as well. The way he loves the girl who's actually his niece. And then when the baby's born, he's not able to come clean because of whatever's happening between him and the woman. He's just not able to break her heart. He's scared of losing her. Eventually, she realizes that he's Edward, and she's of course devastated because now she has to grieve her husband. She thought he was her husband, and she just finds out that her husband has been dead for a long time. And she's also dealing with some internal conflict because she had fallen in love with Edward, so she feels some guilt for falling in love with her dead husband's twin brother, which also just adds to the angst. Now we have those two people who are suffering, who are not sure what to do. Now add to the mix the fact that back in those days in England, a widow could not marry her deceased husband's brother. So legally, they could not be married. They could stay together if Edward keeps pretending to be Albert. And eventually, once she realizes that she doesn't want to be without him, she loves Edward, they decide to stay together and pretend he's Albert, and he just wants to be with her so much, he's okay with giving up on being himself and pretending to be his brother for the rest of his life. So that's their plan. However, at some point, she realizes she cannot go with that, and then there's a whole new level of drama happening. The story is so very angsty. There's so much emotional suffering, on both characters' sides. It's beautiful. It's about two people who want to be together, but they're trying to figure out how they can be together. And then at the end, and now this is going to be a major spoiler, and this is the part that just completely broke my heart, that made me feel like, whoa, this is quite a plot twist, and this is so well thought out on the author's part. And this happens when Edward and his brother's wife go to visit his friends and the friend's father. And the father says, the father can see that Edward, and he knows this is Edward, not Albert, who died. The father sees that Edward loves the woman, and he's like, well, why don't you take her to Switzerland? And Edward's like, what? Switzerland? Why Switzerland? Albert told me to take her to Switzerland. And then the father, the friend's father, is like, well, because in Switzerland you can marry the widow of your brother. Again, in England it's against the law. In Switzerland you can legally marry. And in that moment, Edward gets this epiphany. Why would Albert tell him, be me, take her to Switzerland? He meant for them to get married. And at that point, Edward realizes that Albert knew about Edward's feelings for his wife all along. And we get kind of like that flashback to when Albert was actually trying to have Edward and his wife spend some more time in each other's company. He loved his wife, of course, and he also loved his brother, and he knew his brother loved his wife, and he was trying to just give his brother a chance to also be in his wife's company. He wasn't trying to obviously give his wife up to his brother, but he knew that his brother was suffering because he couldn't be with her. And this is just so beautiful and so heartbreaking. And now the wife, again, I shouldn't have forgotten her name. She read Albert's diary from when he was on that trip where he ended up passing away. And his very last entry was actually about Edward, and he said that, well, there's no one better to take care of you if something happens to me than Edward. And to her, that's also an epiphany. And essentially, they both realize that Albert has given them their blessing. And yeah, they go to oh, there's a plot twist. I need to mention this. This is a huge spoiler, but at this point she realizes that she's pregnant, and this is Edward's baby. So there is a very happy ending. They go to Switzerland, they get married, they come back to England. Yes, there's a huge scandal. Yes, people are like, what is going on? What the hell? But eventually people accept them, and they are very happy together. They end up giving birth to a son who's now the heir. And this is Edward's son. And the epilogue is many, many years later, when Albert's daughter, Edward's niece, she's getting married, and Edward is the man walking her down the aisle, and he could swear he hears his brother's voice saying, "Well done, brother." And this was another very powerful moment, because again, this is a man who went through so much emotional suffering, through so much grief from losing his brother, and from feeling so much guilt for loving his brother's wife and for actually taking her as his wife. And when he hears that voice, "Well done, brother," which is, of course, he thinks, okay, I'm just hearing things. This is such a powerful moment. This is just a moment of revelation where everything falls into place, and he knows that the choices he made were the correct ones. And this is why I think this book needs to be made into a movie. It has a beautiful plot. It has a very strong ending that just grasps your heart and twists it. I would probably cry if I watched a movie like that. I actually didn't quite cry when reading the book. I was close. I was close to tears. I might have teared up a bit. This is an absolutely beautiful book. It is also very steamy. No complaints in that regard. I recommend you read it. If you have already read it, let me know what you think. If you have read it, please make sure to share your feedback. If there's another book you would like me to read, let me know. If you would like me to read and review, that is, let me know. If you just want me to read books without reviewing them, that's also fine. I will read them. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.